We are Rational Labs, and you may know us because we've worked with hundreds of top organizations to bring that behavioral design approach to the process. You may recognize some of the logos there. They're big people like Microsoft, like Google, like Instacart, and even Walmart. We're not superheroes, it's official. We're not into superheroes, but we do have an origin story. So, if we were superheroes, we had a cool origin story. We're not from another planet, nor were we born of mythological parents, but we did start at Google over a decade ago. We founded the behavioral economics business unit at Google, where we worked with over
If you're
25
acting
teams to
serious about wanting
design.
to understand what they do, then come sit here.
Oh, and somebody was getting a front row seat. They're sitting there and they're going to understand what we do, which is what we do. So we started the behavioral economics unit at Google, where we started the first 25 teams there. So if you're asking yourself, why is Google so successful? Obviously, on the record, it's because of our work with them. Duh. No, I joke, but we were instrumental to bring that approach to their work. We've run over 100 research studies over time. You can see a lot of those at our case studies link. Rosie will probably post those in the chat. And we've trained thousands. I'd say probably we're up to tens of thousands of people in the art and science of behavioral design, not the dark arts of behavioral design, because there are dark arts of behavioral design. They're even called dark patterns. Stay away from those. But enough about us. We're here to facilitate this wonderful presentation from the one, the only, Mike Hallsworth. He's here. He's real. He's not virtual. He's in DC. He's getting ready to present at a conference. But before he goes to that conference, he's going to melt your brains with all kinds of interesting insights garnered over a 20-year career, working as both an official as an official and advisor to governments around the world, even around the universe. I think he's interplanetary. Before his current role, he led the Behavioral Insight Team's global work on health and tax, and previously served as not the junior, but the senior policy advisor at the Cabinet Office of the UK government. This gives him a deep hands-on expertise across both policy development and real-world service delivery. He's been a leading figure. I mean, I've listened to you, Michael, on like 5 podcasts. And maybe that means I don't get out enough. Maybe that means you're a celebrity in the world of podcasting. I don't know. But he's shaped behavioral science, including that EAST framework, which you may have heard of. He may talk about behavioral government and the mind space report, which should be said as it is written. Mind Space Report. His research has been published in The Lancet, the Journal of Public Economics, and Nature Human Behavior, accumulating more than 7,000 citations. He is the co-author of Behavioral Insights, and his newest book is what we're here to talk about today, The Hypocrisy Trap. Don't get caught in it. Don't get caught in it. Learn about it today. It was published in 2005. We'll have links to it in the chat. You should pick it up at your earliest convenience. He holds a PhD in behavioral economics from Imperial College London and is currently a distinguished lecturer, which actually made me think that you should have like a nice beard there, Michael, but maybe next time, at the University of Pennsylvania with prior positions at Princeton, Columbia, and Imperial College London. Yes, that's right. He's here. He's live. He's not AI. He's actually at a WeWork. So, Michael, tell us all about what we're going to enjoy today.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Yes, I'm in a lovely WeWork in DC, and I'm really happy to be speaking with you today. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about hypocrisy, as the title of this talk indicates, and I want to try and offer you something new here and give new insights into what hypocrisy is and why we should think about it a bit more. So I'm going to talk about three things based on the book that came out a couple of months ago. First thing is, why do we care about hypocrisy? Second one, why does it matter for businesses? And I thought I'd given some of the experience of Irrational Labs more in the private sector. I thought I'd focus there as well, because I thought your audience might be pretty interested in that because it really is relevant for companies. And this isn't just a council that, there are various problems with hypocrisy in the corporate world. It also talks about what companies can do differently, drawing on these insights from behavioral science. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about why hypocrisy matters, taking you back to 2021. Um, we're in my apartment in New York. My daughter, who's then about 7, I think, 6 or 7, is asking post kind of Christmas if she can have some cake after dinner. And the grown-ups kind of say, no, we've had too many sweet things recently. And she goes away to her room, and then she comes back about 5 minutes later to find us eating cake from the fridge. And she's outraged, understandably, but within a few seconds, she says, um, you're like the Prime Minister having parties when he told everyone not to have parties. And if you remember, this was the Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, in this picture. At the time, in 2021, this is a massive kind of scandal that we'd been talking about, that the Prime Minister had been saying that no, a rule that there are no parties allowed, people can't gather together. And then the news came out that, in fact, in 10 Downing Street, the heart of the government where he was living, they had been having parties. It was a major scandal. It was widely seen to end the career of the Prime Minister at the time. And it was seen as the hypocrisy that did it for him in the terms of this newspaper article and many other people. Um, People didn't mind him being, breaking the rules, but when it was his own rules he was breaking, that was a line that we feel couldn't be crossed. And this matters because it's not just a one-off thing. There's evidence that this really reduced trust in government over the longer term. That's what the subsequent kind of inquiries and so on um, showed up. And when the book came out just a few months ago, I was reading a newspaper article, and it was all about how people in the UK, in this instance, cared less about climate change, or seemed to say that they cared less about climate change. And I was reading this, and I just came across this part of the article. Thomas 40 says it's not a top priority. I mean, talking about climate change. What annoys me with it, it's a bit like COVID, where the government said, this is what you've got to do, and they sort of did their own thing. So even with climate change, they have to go on their private jets and get where they need to. It's a little bit hypocritical. So this sting of the double standards or hypocrisy and COVID continues just to pop up out of nowhere almost. And when you read this, I kind of read this and thought, Thomas, I get it in one level, but in another sense, does this make any sense? Like, you either think the issue is important or not. What other people have done about it, you could argue it's a signal that maybe the issue isn't that important, sure, but this can be used as an excuse to do nothing, which you wanted to do anyway. The idea of hypocrisy has such a powerful hold over our imagination. It can mean we maybe don't do the right thing, that we know it's the right thing because maybe other people aren't doing it, and we all lose. So what is going on here? Why do we see hypocrisy everywhere? Why are we so keen to see it, to use it, to invoke it? And the evidence is we do see hypocrisy everywhere. So if you have somebody who says that they think um, that if they think that they are against eating meat, but they're not really sure, so they're not really expressing a strong opinion, and then later um, they eat a burger. About half the people think that's quite hypocritical. So it's not that you have to express a really strong preference. Any kind of indication that you have a view will then be used against you, or can be used against you by people making accusations, even if it's not a strong one. Um, you can't even escape really by saying nothing. This is a study which kind of amusingly used a video of AJ McLean from the Backstreet Boys, which is the guy in the picture. And there's people were shown in this experiment, this video, but they were either told that he was being interviewed by a right-wing cable news channel or a left-wing cable news channel. In both cases, he was saying, we, the band, are neutral when asked about politics. I'm not taking either side, it's just uncomfortable. But when he was they thought he was interviewed by a right-wing news station. They thought his real views were left-wing, and he was just saying this to conceal them. And the same was true in the opposite. If you thought the TV show was left-wing, you thought views were right-wing. So even saying I don't have a view on it, we see that as trying to conceal what your true views are, and we see it as hypocritical. We actually judge people more harshly if they don't have opinions quite often, or they don't really know what they think, compared to someone who has a strong opinion that we disagree with. So it really is quite hard to escape this. And if you do get accused of hypocrisy, there's, a lot of vitriol thrown at you. We actually dislike hypocrites more than liars. So here's another experiment. If you have somebody who says that they never download music illegally, and then they're found to download music illegally, you know, there's a penalty for that. We don't like people who don't tell the truth. But if you compare it to someone who says that downloading music is wrong, and they don't say anything about whether they do it, and then are found to be downloading music, we actually judge those people worse. The people who make the claim about saying it's wrong, shouldn't be done, um, and then do it themselves, are judged as more hypocritical because we see that condemnation as a stronger signal that you wouldn't do something than actually saying you don't do that thing. And that's strange and counterintuitive, but this is what the evidence shows. And so you get with hypocrites stronger claim to status, we think, social status. And when we find out that that is a false claim, that you almost don't deserve the kind of social credit you get through taking that stance, we see it as an unfair exchange. You've got something without sort of paying the price, and it enrages us. And it's not just people. If you take the example of a company polluting a lake, people will recommend more damages and more jail time for executives if they thought that the company made an insincere commitment about the environment beforehand. The act is the same, but the perceived hypocrisy leads to real consequences. So people may say that this is because we're trying to protect trust, you know, and we need people to have incentives to say the truth. I think that is definitely a big part of it. And one thing I want to make clear is I'm not excusing hypocrisy in the book. I'm just saying we need to work out which parts of hypocrisy we condemn most and which we kind of let go, because condemning every kind of hypocrisy actually only backfires. But there is another reason. It's not just about high-minded devotions to principles. There's another reason we like taking down hypocrites, which is that we enjoy it. It gives us pleasure. You can see this in a study where they looked at some students, and we got we you get the example of a student who criticizes people who do cheating and plagiarism, and says that they call out and punish other students who are caught cheating. If you subsequently find out that this person uh, had stolen something from the chemistry department, for example, we don't think that's great. But if they found out to be doing the exact thing they condemned in others, um, in other words, plagiarizing and cheating on exams, we really enjoy it. You may be familiar with this term Schadenfreude, which is your enjoyment at the downfall of others or the misfortune of others. And the feelings of Schadenfreude, this has been measured, are much higher if that person gets caught doing the exact thing that they criticized others for doing. The match matters. That produces pleasure in us. We feel like poetic justice. Almost the table's been turned exactly, and people, have got what they deserve. It's almost like the structure of a joke. You set up with someone criticizing this, and then the punchline is they were doing that exact thing themselves. And it is a bit like a joke. You can't help but laugh when you see examples like plagiarism articles, plagiarism guidelines, which turn out to be plagiarized. That is almost like a joke. So we enjoy when we see this, it's a laugh, it's an anecdote. We enjoy it happening to people who are sort of getting credit for themselves and are being puffed up and then are taken down by their own logic. And yet, despite all that, there's some kind of hypocrisy that we actually like. Give you a couple of examples. You can have a hypocrite who seems to be worse than they actually are in general standards of, say, morality. Um, so the example might be of the founder of the Ashley Madison website, promoted infidelity quite heavily. He wrote a book called Cheaters Prosper. In this experiment, they said, show some people evidence that he was actually faithful in his private life, in his marriage. And people thought that he was more hypocritical as a result, but they also thought he was more virtuous. And you may think that's a contrived example because people don't go around sort of um, promoting their vices, if you like. But there are different sources of social status in the world. You can get a reputation and get attention and credit by claiming to be like a free thinker or a an iconoclast, someone who does different things, who's a maverick. Think about a teenager who pretends not to care about authority, but then goes home and diligently does their homework. Hypocrisy is not just about morality, it's about claims to some kind of status publicly, and we can violate those claims in different ways, some of which are admirable. Sometimes we find hypocrites more relatable. Um, it's not. Sometimes we see the inconsistency and flaws of other people make them more approachable. So, for example, people who are overweight and obese uh, actually want to avoid doctors who are very fitness focused, who seem to be in better shape or have less weight themselves because they fear that they'll be judged by those doctors. They prefer someone who's maybe can understand their situation. Similarly, in climate change, actually, yeah, it's true that if you're a hypocrite and you don't live up to the things you're promoting in terms of not taking flights or insulating your house, you are less effective. But it's not true that the more consistent you are, the more effective you are. The super consistent people who are don't make any compromises are actually less effective as advocates than people who make some compromises because we find them unrelatable. I find them quite distant. And then finally, sometimes we know that there are compromises you have to make. We have multiple different values we want to be true to in our lives. So take the example of someone who recently became vegetarian, maybe talks about this. He then goes back to his, aged grandmother who's making her favorite treasured meat stew. Um, he, if he's not a hypocrite, should say, I don't eat that anymore. I'm sorry, I'm not going to eat that. Whereas if he's kind of a hypocrite, he would maybe pick at the vegetables and say how nice it is. And is it worse that someone does that when you think about the potential harm and distress caused to, you know, the person making the meal? We would say that sometimes it's right to change according to the context to remain true to other kind of values, which may be conflicting. So what's going on with all this? We have these confusing kind of different roles of hypocrisy, different judgments. Um, I want to sort of say to you that the key here is that hypocrisy isn't necessarily a thing that exists in the world out there. It's a judgment we make. It's the name we give to an inconsistency we dislike because we think someone else is getting an unjust benefit. I won't go into too much detail about all this, about what kind of benefits they are, because that's a whole different presentation. Just want to show you a brief example of the kinds of inconsistency and how we judge them differently. So you might consider these different examples. One, a friend of yours says to you one evening that everyone should give money to homeless people in the street. Later that evening, they walk past a homeless person in the street and they don't give them money. Second, a friend of yours says to you one evening that everyone should give money to homeless people in the street. Later that evening, they are talking to someone else and they say the opposite, that no one should ever give money to homeless people in the street. And third, a friend of yours thinks to themselves, doesn't say anything, thinks to themselves, everyone should give money to homeless people in the street. They don't share this thought with anyone. Later this evening, they walk past a homeless person in the street and do not give them money. Okay, so this is a brief example of the different kinds of hypocrisy and how we judge them. So I asked 6,000 people this question. Um, uh, sorry, I asked. So my question to you is, how do you judge these people differently? These different scenarios. Yeah, how hypocritical do you think each of them are? And that's the question I asked to 6,000 people about 2.5 years ago. And this is what they said. So the first thing to say is that I asked them 1 to 7 to rate how hypocritical things were. And it's a 1 to 7 scale where 7 is really hypocritical the most, and 0 is not very. And the first thing to say is I gave people a scenario where you did exactly what you said was right, where you said everyone should give money and you gave money. People still rated that as 2.7 out of 7 in terms of hypocrisy, which feels pretty harsh to me because the person couldn't have done anything else here. But I think maybe shows that people are pretty harsh at judging others. Okay, so then we add in the inconsistency. We keep everything the same. We say that uh, you make the same claim, the same statement, you just don't follow through on it, and instantly the ratings shoot up. This is the effect of pure inconsistency between not practicing what you're preaching. Okay, but then we've got the second thing, which is about saying one thing at one point and saying another thing at another point, being two-faced. And that's kind of inconsistency between words in one place and words in another place. And people hated that even more than saying one thing and doing another, which is kind of interesting. And then finally, the example where you just think it, you don't say it to anyone, but you don't do it. And this was rated lower, but it's still in the realm of hypocrisy because it got about the same rating as someone who said, I always give money to homeless people in the street, but they never actually do it. Okay, so it was in the same realm as somebody who was more like lying, I suppose, but we still condemned it. And evidence shows that we do actually judge people as hypocrites, even if they're just kind of smugly satisfied with themselves. They go around thinking they're a kind of good person without saying it, even though that doesn't match reality. And I think that explains why I'm saying that there is an unjust benefit, because the benefit can be of various different kinds. And I won't go into this in too much detail because, again, different presentation. But what we've seen here is you can have different kinds of inconsistency, which we view more or less harshly, but also the benefits can vary. It can be that you're out there making a claim for yourself as a great person, which is undermined by your actions. But also, it can be true that people see you as hypocritical if they thought you were having a better view of yourself than you actually deserved. That kind of self-image benefit. We have many ways of reconciling our inconsistencies with ourselves to feel good about ourselves. So what is the trap? What's the problem here? I'll say this really quickly. So if we think that hypocrisy is a criticism of other people, it's a judgment we make, it's a process of judging, then what can happen is the accusations run out of control. So if we get too obsessed with criticizing every inconsistency, we start demanding this kind of inhuman consistency that few people or organizations can actually meet, including ourselves, frankly. We often say that people should live up to standards that we cannot meet. In the book, I talk about how this can lead to a kind of ratcheting effect of a kind of purity regime where you're searching out for people who are inconsistent in some little way. The other danger, if you accuse people too much of hypocrisy, is the concept becomes meaningless. We start thinking everything's hypocrisy, nothing's hypocrisy. If everything's hypocrisy, who cares? It loses its force as an accusation, and it can be really powerful as an accusation to keep people on the straight and narrow, to trust people. And so it loses that power, it becomes meaningless. And people think, well, it doesn't matter if I'm a hypocrite. If I'm stronger than you, I can just do what the hell I want. And that's the other bad world. So the takeaway from this is if we try and stamp out all hypocrisy, it'll only backfire. There was going to be some kind of inconsistency, some claims sometime. So we need to target the kinds of hypocrisy that are most toxic and let some go as hard as that can be. And that's where it comes to business in particular, I think. So in business, the evidence is we judge companies even more harshly than people. We personify companies. Um, and there's evidence suggesting that if a company does something, we're more willing to judge them harshly for it compared to an individual. That's the study I cite on this slide. And of course, companies are getting into a trap much like the one that I just mentioned. There have been rising expectations of what companies should do. Um, the kind of issues that consumers want companies to act on have changed over time, much greater emphasis on things like sustainability. So the data shows. And that means that companies have responded with a torrent of promises about what they'll do to act on these issues. Maybe really inflated claims. And yet, you would think that if you make more claims, some of the pressure lets off you because you can show you're doing the right thing. That's not the evidence. The evidence shows that more claims invite more scrutiny. There's more ratcheting effect. So there's a ratcheting effect. You create pressure rather than relieving it. You get more scrutiny, and then you can't get away from this fact that you need to make a profit as well. This widening gap between your claims and the way you have to, you know, deliver certain outcomes for your business means we increasingly see hypocrisy. That's why confidence in major companies has halved in the last 25 years. That's why if we see companies like human beings react quite viciously to them, companies get punished if they're seen as hypocritical. And you might think that your biggest fans, the ones who identify you most with your company, will protect you. But it seems actually that they're the ones who will respond most violently. They've got the biggest incentive to dissociate their identity from your company. And so when they do turn on you, then it's with greater force. And there have been some major examples of deceptive hypocrisy. Volkswagen making big claims about their environmental achievements while also deceiving the regulators in terms of their emissions, famously. But even the biggest, the most virtuous companies find it really hard to escape the accusation of hypocrisy. Patagonia, for example, has put the money where its mouth is, has transferred itself to a trust, makes real efforts for climate change. People still accuse it of hypocrisy. I explore this in the book because Patagonia has grown, it's made money. It has adverts that say, don't buy this jacket, that lead to 30% increases in people buying the jacket. It's really hard to escape this kind of trap. People nowadays know much more about your company through social media, greater transparency. The evidence is that people will judge those who supply your company to you by your standards. So if you make a claim, then they can look in the supply chain to see are all your suppliers meeting that standard. And if they don't, the evidence is that you'll get punished as a result. Of course, this has changed over time. There have been backlashes and so on over the last 5 years, which creates a real problem for companies. If they suddenly reverse commitments they made, then they look like they're just sending false signals to look good, or it looks like they're weak. If you keep your head down and say nothing, like I mentioned earlier, you also get punished for that. And there's data on that this is the case. So what should we do? What does the evidence suggest that companies should do in this situation? In the book, I talk about three main kinds of solutions. One is increasing consistency in your business, making you more consistent in what you do. Second one is reducing the risk of accusations, presenting the work that you do as a company in a way that reduces the risk of being called out for hypocrisy. And the third one is changing our views of hypocrisy as consumers, the level of consistency that we can expect from companies. That may need to change. So the first one is around coordinating for consistency. Sometimes hypocrisy or perceived hypocrisy is just a lack of communication between business units, as when maybe your store managers are chucking out your product while your head office is saying, "We recycle all our products. Bring your purses in to have them repaired. We're against waste." So the lack of communication is definitely an issue. But even the biggest companies can have shown this can work. So Unilever has hundreds of brands, and they were initially some years ago criticized for inconsistency between their brands, between Dove, Dove's Real Beauty campaign, and Axe's objectifying women campaign in the views of critics. And over time, they made big efforts to make all their brands consistent under the set of values, and they actually grew a lot as a result. There are limits to what you can do here, though, because they subsequently walked away from this. But there are there's a there is an ability to think really carefully about how inconsistency will be perceived by your consumers. And one thing that is super important in terms of consistency is treating your employees consistently with your public image, because you can be sure that your employees will actually have the ability to expose any inconsistency. And the logic is kind of inevitable that if you know, the way you treat your employees is maybe the best indicator of what you actually believe in. So treatment of employees seems like a key thing to avoid inconsistency on. You can also do things in your company that you design your processes so you're less likely to put people in a situation where they have to work hard to be virtuous. I won't go into much detail here, but there's evidence. Irrational Labs, my own organization, thinks about this a lot in terms of how can we design processes to make it less likely that the bad outcome happens, to make it less likely that hypocrisy happens. For example, financial advisors can have a strong incentive to recommend an option that benefits them more than their clients. And this really interesting experiment shows that that can be avoided if you just change the order in which financial advisors see some information. So just simple things like the ordering of choices can make people more consistent with their overall intentions. And if you are talking about what you've done, there are ways you can make it less likely you get called out. If you're talking about good work, you actually should admit your company also benefits. Sounds counterintuitive, but seems to be true that people are less likely to judge you as hypocritical if you say, in the example of Starbucks, we're also getting rid of plastic straws so we can serve you drinks faster and save money. Choose a relevant issue. Pepsi got really slammed for trying to co-opt imagery from Black Lives Matter, which was an issue that it seemed to have nothing to do with. Whereas if you're talking about, say, as I mentioned, Starbucks serving drinks quicker or reducing plastic, that's kind of in your core wheelhouse. Being realistic about what you're actually doing reduces criticism. If you talk about more concrete outcomes and what you actually did, compared to fuzzier claims about the environment, you actually get hit less with hypocrisy. You may think it's safer to say something like, "We care about the environment," because you're not making such a commitment that people can hold you to. But the reverse is also true. That fuzzy commitment means people can hold up anything you've done and say it's inconsistent with that broad commitment. And then don't pretend that your actions make your company perfect. Again, I think a good way of talking about this is it's on a journey, that you're getting towards a better place, rather than saying you've solved an issue completely. Again, that is increasing claim of status or a stronger signal you're sending. And I'm going to end here with the most uncomfortable.
Uh-oh, this might have been what we were worried about. Michael, are you frozen? He was going to leave us with an uncomfortable truth, um, which I think is we need to help companies fake it till they make it. We'll have to find that on LinkedIn. No, I don't think that was planned. It would be funny if it was. While we await, he may have to sign in and sign off. One, make sure, are you one of those people that says people should always ask questions at events? Well, ask your questions here. Go to the Google Doc, put your questions in the doc so we can ask Michael. Two, if I know everybody's uncomfortable now, so uncomfortable. Two, if someone could just Google that was a LinkedIn article, if you could Google his LinkedIn article and paste it in there, that would be great. Oh,
I
Michael, you're back. That was exactly what you're worried about. I already filled in with all the AI. Don't worry about it.
Wonderful, Ryan. I'm so sorry for. I mean, blame WeWork. I was just gonna. That was my last slide. I was just gonna say that the most uncomfortable thing is basically that we force companies to be inconsistent sometimes because we want cheap things, but also feel good about buying them. And we often put these inconsistent demands on companies, and then we don't like it when we see it reflected back at us. So sometimes companies can have to make some claims that they don't fully live up to right now, but maybe there's a journey and they'll get somewhere better. And it's really hard for us to give them that time to get there because it's so nauseating sometimes when companies make these big claims that we know they're not living up to. But we actually may get to a better place if we're less judgmental at the first stages, um, because give people companies time to live up to their rhetoric. That's how I was going to end on, and that's the least comfortable part of the whole thing. So I'm
No,
sorry
but
about that.
no, it was awesome. Everybody, you look at the chat, people were, oh, maybe you can't see it. People are like, that's a cliffhanger. What's he going to say? It was perfectly timed. You should have just embraced it because it was really, really dramatic. Accidentally. Yeah, it was very Royal Shakespeare of you. So thank you. Um, with that, we have a bunch of questions. So Dario, you have a lot of questions. So I'm going to bring on Mike, but could you start with the first question? And then we're going to go to Jeff. And as people fill in questions, I'll come back to you. But yeah, Dario, can you tell us where you are talking to us from? I'm looking to find you. This is like searching for Waldo, but different. Maybe Dario vanished. All right, if I can't see Dario, I'm going to go to Jeff. Jeff, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you come on screen?
Sure.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to
Um,
spotlight you.
um, hold on.
Maybe.
Actually, can I just stay on mic? Is that okay? I'm in a sort of
You
a
can.
setting.
You
Is
can.
that okay?
It's all right.
Thanks.
It's more mysterious. We like it. We like it. Ask your
Okay.
question.
Yeah, I'm wearing a dog costume, so I won't embarrass. I'm kidding. Uh, um, no, thanks. Well, at first was just a sort of on a clarity. When you say like we need to be less judgmental, were you speaking like the we as like public, general public or consumers? Is that you just as
Yeah,
general people? Okay, yeah.
consumers. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that. And then I guess I was really interested in the claim that the fans of something respond more strongly to the hypocrisy of the thing that they're a fan of. Because it seems counterintuitive, but there's so many things that are counterintuitive that it almost seems like, oh well, that makes sense, you know. But still like I think like of a but then I want to challenge it a little bit, but then maybe and see where that claim comes from, and if you want to talk more, if you could talk more on it, like thinking of like a parents of a kid, right? If the child's does something, expresses something that's hypocritical, they'll probably excuse it or think around it or be charitable to it or brush it off. And then this one's kind of I'm kind of split on like political fans, right? They'll often like political fans of someone will often give them excuses. That said, there's a current not to get political, but like you do see some high level, like some very prominent examples, maybe around the world right now, where someone is sort of like a political leader might have not be doing what they stated, and their fan base reacting strongly. But I don't know whether to which one's stronger, that reaction or the excusing reaction. But anyways, I found that to be an interesting, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk on it. And thanks for letting me give a ramble
Sure,
before the question.
sure. So I've put the link to the journal article in the chat that gives that study. Um, what you see, I believe, maybe not on that one. There are a few other ones. Is that people who are the strongest believers will defend for longer, but then when the change comes, it can come quite suddenly and is quite violent. So it can sort of like turn against it. I believe that there's some evidence for. I have this study in my mind to do with mega churches, which I think is a real study that they did to do with when how long people will support someone who seems to be contradicting the kind of the moral tenets that they are giving. But yeah, so that there's definitely a study I remember reading as part of this book where it looks at the mega churches and also the one I sent you. So yeah, it's a timing thing, and it does seem that the idea is that because you're so closely associated, you need to make it extra clear that you are pulling away. But I think there's more to. I don't want to make it too counterintuitive because at some level, obviously, people will. If you're a supporter, you're more likely to support, right? Um, but if there's a change and there's an unstable situation, there's a possibility that the people who are closest have the strongest desire to move away quickly and decisively and publicly to make it clear that they are not in the situation they were before. But thank you for thank you for the question. Were there other parts of the question I forgot about there?
No, that's pretty good. And I just want to like thank you for the presentation today too. It was really
Thanks.
interesting. And thanks for your answer.
Appreciate it.
No, that's excellent too that you framed it with this political thing, and I think Jeff's point's really valid. We see this all over the globe right now, and it is a very hard square peg for people to put in the circle hole, right? Oh, it looks like Flora, would you like to come on, please? Where are you coming to us from?
Hey everyone, so nice to be here. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
great.
looking for you, but yeah,
Here, let me come on video.
there you
I'm
go.
joining from sunny Vancouver. Who would have thought?
Very
Um,
cool.
yeah, so really nice to be here. Thank you for the great presentation. So my question is, I'm a partnerships person, right? I've been working in partnerships and resource mobilization for 12 years. So I'm thinking, are there any insights into the right sort of initiatives, arrangements, the right partners, the right stakeholders that will give that credibility with consumers, with customers, with other stakeholders, regulators, etc., that you would recommend? Are there any insights into that, whether it's types of initiatives, types of partnerships, where they sit in the business, or perhaps what not to do? Maybe any case studies or examples that may be top of mind for you. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that I don't have a good answer to it, is the honest truth. I just got to the point where I say if I don't have a good answer to something, because otherwise it wastes everyone's time. I don't know any particular research on that, but I do know that you are judged by the company you keep. So there's evidence that you get judged if a family member, for example, even violates a principle that you've espoused, right? Um, there are many examples of that. I think it will become less of a risk as it gets further out in the network of associations. But yeah, one thing that we do judge people on is your affiliations. If you're a member of a club or an organization, we hold you to those standards. So yeah, I'm afraid I don't have a great answer apart from it cuts both ways. Choose your associations wisely because they can be used against you as well.
If I could just
So,
pitch in with a bit of insight here, Global
Yeah.
Affairs Canada recently launched a new edition of a survey that they do with UCL. That's comparative study with UK, France, Germany, US, and Canada. And the reason for my question is that they launched this yesterday, and it showed how universities and university professors are particularly credible among Canadians when it comes to the public's sentiment towards aid, poverty reduction, and the role that these different stakeholders have. So let's look into it. I think it would be incredibly helpful for the business community as well. Thanks.
very cool. Very cool. So, Michael, that is interesting. It is political season here in the US. So, if you were to go into a campaign tomorrow as a hypothetical, oh, wait, wait, wait. I did see another question pop there. Patrick, I'll save my question. Patrick, come on the mic.
Hey, Michael. I
Hi.
guess my question is about advocacy for, individuals, not necessarily companies, or perhaps even advocacy organizations. Uh, would the strategies be the same as the ones that you outlined for companies today? And is there anything in particular that you might recommend for advocacy?
Yeah, so I think broadly they are the same with some modifications because the need to make a profit and so on it's slightly different and so on. So you're less constrained in that sense. But I do think it's very important, o- obviously, to avoid hypocrisy because people will seize on that and that will be the main thing that people talk about. Um, but also you might want to say that to get ahead of the issue and say that we're not perfect. There are things that we are doing which um, are a consequence of the environment that we're in, um, and that means that we're also looking to change that environment. So this is the idea of honest hypocrisy, which I talk about in the book, that you can admit your flaws and be more credible as a result. But you have to be careful when you do this. You can't just do it in a kind of like brazen way and like, oh yeah, but the rules don't apply to us. Like obviously, you have to be more like genuinely. Look, I myself, do try, but I don't succeed all the time with this, and that makes it an even stronger reason to push for this change. Because even I, who I have the strongest intentions here, don't manage to follow through. Um, that the evidence is that that kind of honest hypocrisy is actually really effective because it removes the risk or reduces the risk that you're sending a false signal um, that's shown to be false later. I think the key final thing to say is though that you should try and do this combination of you believe in the principle, you have a principle. It's not like you don't know what you want to do because people also judge that badly, but you just make it clear that the implementation of that is sometimes difficult and you fall short of it sometimes. And that's not to license it and say it's okay, but just say it's a journey we're all on and to get that connection with that person rather than saying, I've got it all sorted. Why aren't you doing it? You're failing, whereas I've got it all fixed. So then I think you can navigate that kind of honest hypocrisy route and actually get something much more effective.
No, that's excellent, and that brings me to this kind of tactical thing. So, if you were advising a political campaign, and to put this in concrete terms, say it's somebody who I'm just going to do a hypothetical. Let's try and make it concrete. Who has a very pro-environmental stance, but is in a very dirty state, right? That like let's say there's somebody in a state that's known for its coal production. How would you recommend they frame this in a tactical way? How would they use these strategies you talked about very concretely?
Um, so I mean, I should be clear. I'm not advocating kind of deception, right? I'm not saying because I think that I say in the book, like I was calling it hypocrisy has a important effect in society to try and maintain trust. So I think the big thing is that you shouldn't be in that instance trying to deceive and be something you're not. Um, there, I think you get more into the realm of trying to understand where people are coming from with their concerns, and it's more like a framing issue of showing how something is consistent with some common set of values, and that's where you get into issues like conversational receptiveness that Julia Minson has done in terms of understanding where people is coming from, rather than going into a polarizing um, wave of insults. So yeah, I feel like it's less in the hypocrisy space and more in the kind of communication space. And maybe also just at some point you should say, I don't believe in this, or I do believe in this. And that's all that you can say, right? Because the danger is that you people know, people come from consent. They look for hypocrisy all the time. If they think that you're trying to somehow uh, be clever and talk around what you actually believe, they'll pick up on it. So you may have very little you can do, and you may be best off just trying to be clear what you do and don't believe in, and avoid the hypocrisy accusations that way.
No, that's excellent. Nabil, you can ask the final question for today. So bring it. Where are you coming to us
Oh,
from?
that's a heavy one. From California.
Awesome.
So
Best
the
for
other side.
last. That's you. That's you.
Yeah, as I'm like hearing this, I'm just thinking I'm thinking about the lens of like profit maximization.
Yeah.
And so I'm just gonna like read my question because it took me forever to formulate it, which was basically like it's coming from like a structural determinism like lens. So like if a corporation's conduct is determined by its structure and the forces acting on it, so market forces, legal, all of those types of things, is it even coherent to ask when to act morally when it conflicts with profit? Or does like genuine moral agency require inventing a different kind of institution, one where profit isn't the master variable? And even thinking about the stages of a corporate life cycle, how it'll go, like I think one it actually hits like the master stage like of maturity, think like Meta or something like that, where they have a dominant stake in the market and they're aiming to keep that. You can see hypocrisy kind of waver very quickly from like one thing to another, or even using, yeah, just I think you get where I'm going with this. Like, I feel like it's not possible to have a different type of moral structure outside of profit maximization if like it's embedded in your DNA.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very good question, and so then the question comes back on us in terms of, yet the last 25 years, we have been asking or for companies to send moral signals or to adopt certain practices, and it may not be something that they're well suited for. Now, people debate about this. I'm not actually an expert in like corporate ethics and so on. Alison Taylor, who I quote in the book, has written a really good book on this as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, you could be unhypocritical by just saying we don't care about anything other than making a profit for our shareholders. And sometimes that plays really well because people like finally they've got rid of the bullshit and they're just kind of that is a company and it exists to make money. And then you argue that it's up to other actors, like you say, outside its structure, regulators and so on, to deal with the negative externalities. And that's certainly more of the picture like 30 years ago. It just got more complicated because of consumer demand and the respond to it. So I think it comes back to what question, is there coherence in our demands? And I think the book I'm saying there isn't coherence in our demands quite often. Or if there is, we're kind of obscuring the inconsistency.
I think one of the difficulties like for me in hearing something like this is like how complex like social like being a social actor is, and how there's
Sure.
like influences from society that both like perpetuate certain types of behaviors in corporations, and then the type of agency that we're also expected to have on our behalf of like we should temper our like anger towards certain types of hypocrisy. Seems like we're asking for a degree of passivity in like the changes that we'd like to see in the world. Maybe it's what we are ignorant of is the nature of some of these corporations and the forces that are on them. Not so much that I want to temper my feeling of like this is like not what I would like to see in the world. And I recognize that like the stage at which you are at in court, like in your corporate life cycle or whatever, may have you behave in different ways, but fundamentally you're there to do one thing. I don't know if it's like being honest with that or anything. I just like feel like I do not want to be passive in my temperament of understanding the moral character of like some of the of like
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I get it. And I should say that there's a bit of nuance to what I'm saying. I ended on that point because the most controversial one. I think what I was saying was sometimes our desire to criticize the company is very tempting, can actually lead to a worse outcome. Sometimes, not all the time. And the key in the book I tried to show is how can we judge when someone is being malignly deceptive with hypocrisy to get unjust benefits, and when are they actually heading in the right direction? And that for me is the key question.
Thank you.
A really hard one, but thank you for your question.
No, that's an excellent cliffhanger. So before we do a proper thank you to you, Michael, I have a quick por favor for you. I'm scrolling your LinkedIn page and I'm looking for the link that links to the final slide, your cliffhanger about corporate responsibility for people, and have not found it yet. I suspect that was during
Oh,
2025. So if you
it was last
have
year.
the link, yeah, like LinkedIn is not easy to scroll. So if you have the link and you could share it, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll all live. But it looked like you had a fun blog there. So, but ladies and gentlemen, please give up your best emojis, all your chat love to Michael for his genius today, for his WeWork magic, and for his he delivered. He said he was going to deliver. He delivered. No hypocrites here. Lots of extra thought here at the end and insights for all of you. Feel free to friend him over on the LinkedIn's and follow him. He's a very active poster with lots of insights sharing on the regular. So, to all of you that know us, please don't be strangers. Claire's here. Claire's our business development friend. So, if you want to work with anybody at Irrational Labs, you know what we can help you do. We can help you with your product design. We can help you with your behavioral science training. We can help you with your AI strategy. And we can just help you meet cool, interesting, smart people like Michael and the rest of our team to get your products better and make people healthier, wealthier, happier, and even smarter on good days when you hang out at things like this. So yes, there will be, this will be on our YouTube channel soon. So thank you all for your time and genius today, and we'll catch you all next month. Take care.